Welcome, 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 everyone, to another Option Menu Crew Reacts. Today we have myself, Ryan, and I've got crew member Ed with me today. How you doing, Ed?
Good. I've got a lot on my mind after this last Nintendo announcement, but you do too, and that's why we're here.
Yep, we are doing a react today, oddly enough, because of Nintendo. Again, we are reacting to the Nintendo Switch OLED model, in parentheses, the new model of the Switch. We were all hoping for the Switch Pro to be announced, and it was not the Switch Pro. It's not Super Switch, and even though it is called the Switch OLED model, that's just about it. It's about the only upgrade there. So we're going into this with a lot of disappointment, and yeah, we'll be fair as usual, but can't help but feel disappointed that there isn't increased specs, unfortunately. Ed, your initial thoughts?
I don't think anyone wasn't disappointed. You had a lot of reputable sources stating that there was going to be a model that with upgraded internals that maybe could do 4K with some sort of upscaling. I mean, Bloomberg reported on that, and I hope they don't usually make reports without a reliable source, but everyone was wrong on this. It's just a screen update with a few other things, but so what those few things are, just for our listeners, they are an OLED screen. There is an Ethernet port built into the dock. There is an upgraded kickstand that goes the whole length of the back of the Switch, and oh, it has double the storage now, but double the storage means 64 gigabytes instead of 32 gigabytes. Am I missing anything else, Ryan?
Yeah, let me clarify a few points there, Ed. So the OLED screen is also a bigger screen. It's been increased from 6.2 inches to 7 inches diagonally, which when I was doing some measurements, that was what I expected it would be, because I actually ran a ruler when the rumors were going around, and yeah, you could totally fit that 7 inch within the existing bezel. There is the better kickstand, like you mentioned. I assume that the micro SD card slot is still under there. It looks like they might have even recessed the USB. No, they couldn't have. That wouldn't make sense. I was going to say the USB-C port that's on the bottom, but that actually doesn't make sense, because there's a little notch. There's another little notch for the stand, and I'm not sure what that is. I haven't gotten a good look at the back of it.
It aligns it aligns the Switch with the USB-C port. So if you look inside the dock, there's a notch. There's a little bump
Okay,
that fits into the notch of the Switch. It's so you can't put it in the wrong way. It will always slot in nicely.
makes sense. Yeah, thank you. It looks like there's now like 4 different adjustable angles for the kickstand, whereas there was kind of only one for the current kickstand. So I guess that's kind of a mini feature. The amount of memory is now 64 gigs, like you said, is double the current internal hard drive size for the Switch is 32 gigabytes. And then they also have enhanced speakers on the actual Switch model itself. So
And what does
that's
that mean? What does that mean? How good could speakers built into the Switch actually be?
well, if they were using
Maybe they're amazing. Maybe they're amazing.
maybe if they were using really cheap speakers before, they're using slightly less cheap speakers now. So like audio quality can go up. Like I have the Oculus Quest 2, and they actually have some really decent speakers on there. Not or clearly not the best, and you can totally wire in some headphones for it. But when you're just playing there, like by yourself in your home, and you just want to hear the sound, it's pretty good at being like feeling 3D and being clear. I really don't have a problem with it unless I make a lot of extra noise or something's going on in the background. So speakers have gotten pretty good for their size. And if you think about how big the speakers are in like our earbuds these days, it can't be that much bigger, especially since they have more room for components in the shell. So we'd have to hear it for ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the earbuds that most people use are, um, you know, that high quality audio, but I guess the bar is pretty low. So
But even for
I'd
like high
keep an open
quality,
mind listening to it.
let's say like AirPods, because I really like, and I'm not even talking about the AirPod Pros. I'm talking about regular AirPods. They're still pretty small overall.
Oh, they're very small.
Yeah.
They
So
sound okay to me, but I'm no audiophile. I don't think you are either.
no, I'm not a super big audiophile. I have my preferred sound profile, but that's not even descriptive. It's not something I could really accurately describe. Other things. So essentially, Nintendo announced white Joy Cons are coming out. They have, and then there's the new Switch docks. So as we suspected, the old docks got discontinued because they are releasing a new model of the dock, and there are almost more significant changes to that than there are to the actual Switch model. So they have a black and white version of the model. One is fully white, one is fully black. They have adjusted the cooling on there. It looks like they have a slightly bigger fan or bigger exhaust ports, at least, or I don't know what you want to call them, for air to get through. They have removed
Vents.
vents. Thank you.
Vents would be the word.
Improved venting on the back. Thank you. They've recut the cable extension around the door, or the cable opening around the little back hatch. They have removed the USB 3.0 port that is in the back with the power cable and HDMI port, and have replaced it with a Ethernet adapter, which should have been there from the start, and they still should have had the extra USB port. It's not that expensive. They still have the two USB ports on the side. Based on the information we have, they are not improved to two 3.0 slots, which who knows why. Like, all the corners cut here. And Nintendo is selling this. It will be available on October 8th, the same day as Metroid Dread. It will retail for $349.99 American. That is $50 more than a standard Switch, and it will be available in the white color and the neon blue and red color, which will have a black dock. And you will be able to buy the docks separately. At this time, they have not priced them, but currently the only place you can get official Nintendo Switch docks is through Nintendo.com, as far as I can tell, unless maybe there's some like used retailer, not used, but retailers reselling some old stock, because they were discontinued a while ago, from my understanding. And Nintendo lists the price as $59.99 for the old dock. I believe that's down from what it used to be. I think I picked one up for a friend for like
I
90
think it
bucks.
was 79.99. I thought it 90 really? I thought it was 80.
I would have to
Well,
double
either way,
check, but I
60 is
remember
still too much.
60 is still too much for that hunk of plastic. And this one, I guarantee, if the other one's not going to go down in price, they're going to price this one higher, for sure. If it's the same price, it's still too high, but at least it's the same price, and it's just an alternate version of the dock. What's really funny is that all of these improvements on the system only benefit people who actually play it portably, which would mean that why would they even bother doing that to the normal Switch when they could have just done it to the Lite? That's my initial read. It would have just made more sense to put a slightly bigger screen with OLED on the Switch Lite. Improve the speakers, improve the kickstand. I guess they wanted to raise the price. Well, that's not it. I don't believe that's it. Based on what I've heard from some of the other YouTubers and podcast places I listen to, the current theory, and unfortunately all we have is theories, is that Nintendo was preparing to do like the 4K implementation, DLSS, and you basically use a stronger CPU and GPU and RAM upgrade for the next Switch model, which would have presumably been this OLED model. But then they backed out for some reason. They made a decision. They took their old hardware. They went through with the OLED screen. They went through with new speakers, and they just decided not to increase the power in this one for whatever reason. Maybe they couldn't make the chips. But considering the state of the world, we can't rule out that COVID and the chip shortage were played into this. So I can understand that, but I think not having that power increase completely invalidates the point of releasing a new Switch model at this point, other than like, I get what the Switch Lite is doing. I still think it's a complete disgrace that it is not able to be put in a dock. But at this point, if you're changing the standard Switch model, if it doesn't have more power, there's no point. Giving it a better screen doesn't mean anything.
I mean, if I the only people who really would buy this, I think people who don't already have a Switch, and maybe this is the thing that pushes them over the edge. Maybe they were like holding out for the Pro model, and now that we have this, they can be like, oh, I guess Nintendo's not updating it. I can finally stop waiting. Because I'm sure there are plenty of people who are waiting this year. Like, should I wait until they announce the Pro? Should I wait until the Pro? But then I guess you could keep waiting. Maybe they announce the Pro next year, then you never get a Switch.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
I don't know who this is for except someone who doesn't already have a Switch.
Yeah, to your point, if someone doesn't own a Switch, they will either go, okay, well, I'll just buy a normal Switch now or a Switch Lite because I don't need to pay extra for those things. I don't care about those features. Or they'll be like, well, if that's as good as it gets, then I might as well just get that one. I'll pay a little extra. OLED's cool. The base unit's going to be cool. It will be the first revision of the battery, so it will be improved battery life over the launch wave of consoles. The internal memory does help everyone, so even if you, it's not. I don't think $50 more is worth upgrading, and 64 gigs is still too small. I'm almost insulted as a consumer, and maybe that's a little too strong to say as someone who already has a Switch, because this is hashtag first world problems, you know. But as a critic of a retail product, it's extremely underwhelming. This is something that I would not recommend someone buying. And the only reason, as we've discussed, Ed, is in our friend group and part of the crew, Paul, he doesn't have a Switch yet, and we were all kind of planning on getting Switch Pros and then hoping he would just buy one of ours secondhand, and then he could join in on the party. But now I wonder if he'll just go for a Switch on his own, and that's the only reason I was thinking is he could still have a hand me down for cheap. But I think I'm gonna resist that and just hold on to mine and wait for whatever Nintendo's next generation console is.
I really do not want to reward Nintendo for this business decision. It- I mean, I don't need a new Switch, so I'm probably not going to buy one any way. But I want to take a stand, kind of, and I'm not. I always like the new shiny, and I'm sure you do too. But this is a new shiny that I don't think I want. I don't want to give Nintendo money and have them think that this was a good decision.
No, it's not a good decision. What they're releasing now is basically like the DS Lite, where this is essentially what the original model should have been. However, this one's more expensive. I don't think like the DS and like the 3DS and stuff, like they actually were more expensive when their more refined models came out. So it's
I really loved my DS Lite though. So
oh yeah.
that's I DS Lite was a great console. And you're right, that's what the DS should have been. It shouldn't have been that big tank thing that, was kind of a sloppy hinge. It didn't really fit together all that well. Like this is what they should have released in 2017
And what's really funny is that
for the Switch that is.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Um,
I said for the Switch that is, and I'm not the DS.
I do think back to when DS was going through its life cycle, both the DS to 3DS and 2DS, and how none of those revisions ever got capacitive. They all stayed resistive. And that was something a lot of people mentioned about before is like, sure, it works. Like, resistive can work and they're programmed that way. And for the 3DS, the second screen became much more of like an accessory than it was to being like an actual game screen. But still, like, Nintendo never made like a huge upgrade, but they did add more power when they did the new 3DS line. They actually upgraded the CPU, but I think, because I was reflecting on this, I think part of the reason they they did those upgrades is because they were supporting other gimmicks. They increased the CPU power slightly for the DSi because they had the camera, and I don't think they could get away with the camera features that they wanted at the original baseline. So like, oh, well, to make our toy work, we have to put in a little more power. Then with the new 3DS, they were doing the eye tracking thing, which supported the 3D feature, and they realized, well, we need to put in some more power because we can't support this accessory to our gimmick. Until eventually, the 2DS, which I don't know if the new 2DS actually has the same power as the new 3DS, but I guess if it's
It does. It does. The
okay,
new 2DS XL is the same as the new 3DS in internals. It just doesn't have the 3D feature or the head tracking cameras.
okay,
I have one, and it feels a lot cheaper than the new 3DS XL.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
definitely a cheaper alternative. Even the build quality and the buttons feel cheaper.
mm,
It was cheaper.
yeah. It must have been all those other component parts, but like removing the cameras must have made the thing cheaper overall. I think the new 2DS design looks really cool. I didn't need it. I have my 3DS XL, and I had no need to like re-upgrade or because any of the exclusives I didn't want to play, and they performed pretty poorly as well. It was impressive that they got like Xenoblade Chronicles 1 on a 3DS, but at what cost? Was it really worth doing that? In my opinion, no. I think the loss in fidelity in that was not worth it. They should have just made a Xenoblade Chronicles game for 3DS. But yeah, obviously, it's cheaper to work
Yeah,
with a
how
game that
cool?
already
How cool
exists.
would that have been? Yeah, how cool would that have been if they had like a built for 3DS and a Blade Chronicles game? That would be cool.
That would have been
That's
cool.
like the future we're not in.
Yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles though wasn't established enough. Like they barely got Xenoblade Chronicles 1 to come to the West. It was Operation Rainfall that got it
Mhm.
there, and if it wasn't for that viral campaign, I don't think it would have worked. So,
Yeah, I remember that.
yeah. So that was a weird spot. So I get why they didn't do it then, but it would have made way more sense. And some of this is hindsight, so I'll concede that point. It's just super sad. Like we're all the reason it's so disappointing is not because I need 4K. I don't care about 4K, and all the people who care about resolution over frame rate, I choose not to understand you because the resolution is not going to matter if your game feels like a slideshow. And I think that's the thing is people let a lot of things slide because they don't really know what the alternative's like when things just work. So they're just, this is fine. This is what video games are. I've played games that are like, and that's a shame that people are so used to poorly performing games that it's like, this feels like everything else. Um, this also not increasing the power probably hampers a lot of third-party projects, and we've already seen games now coming to Switch that aren't performing well in terms of like graphic performance. Sales wise, it's probably going to cut into their sales, but considering that they're scaling down their games for Switch, and I don't know how much it costs. It's been worth it for a lot of companies to figure out how to put their games on Switch at the reduced fidelity and stuff. But when first party Nintendo games, especially like Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity, are not even hitting 30 regularly, like a stable 30, and they're getting real low. I don't know. Did you watch the Mighty Keith video today?
No, well, no, I didn't.
He showed some captured footage
Yeah.
of the game like at a really difficult part slowing down. It's like I don't care if you built if you build that difficult part, you better make sure it runs. Otherwise, don't do that part. It's just inexcusable. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts that Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was supposed to be a cross-gen Switch to Switch Pro game. And they got screwed because Nintendo held back on it. And like, well, it was going to work on both, so we might as well sell it now, and it'll when it's beefed up, just like how they did with Hyrule Warriors on Wii U, and then they did the enhanced version for Switch later. No, the 3DS. They did the. Sorry, I was still thinking original Hyrule Warriors, but I'm talking about how they put it on 3DS, and then they also put it on new 3DS, and how it really only ran on new 3DS. So
Wasn't that Fire Emblem Warriors on 3DS? It was Hyrule Warriors also on 3DS. I thought it was Fire
both,
Emblem Warriors that was on 3DS.
both,
Yeah, either way, they shouldn't have been running on 3DS.
no, or they should have made like a specific version that actually could run. That's the problem.
I mean, these aren't really hardware things. These are developers making bad choices things. Like if they wanted to build a game that ran at 60 frames per second on the Switch hardware as it is, they certainly could. I mean, Mario Odyssey does that. I think,
Mario Odyssey runs at
doesn't it?
60. Super Smash Brothers runs at
Mario
60.
Kart Mario Kart does.
Mario Kart does.
Super Mario 3D World, not Bowser's Fury, but the base game does. Like
Docked.
it seems like it seems like it's like, you know, Zelda. Every Zelda game seems like it has problems on the Switch. Breath of the Wild, Link's Awakening, Age of Calamity.
Yeah.
I did play Fire Emblem Three Houses, and that had some like perplexing performance issues where just running around the monastery and panning your camera would cause slowdown. So
Yeah, and that's not
I
a
don't
very
get
like
it.
intensive, fast-paced game. Like that is a very controlled game. So everything that's supposed to be within the field of view, Pokemon, the new Pokemon, but as I've come to understand, Pokemon really is always under budget. So or really low budget. It's crazy.
They're an indie game that sells AAA numbers.
And that's so you're right. Part of it is the developer, but this is where it's two. Or I'm gonna say it is two. Two things are right at the same time. The platform sets what your ceiling is in terms of what you can get away with, and then as the developer, you have to choose what you try to get away with on there within that limit. So it is a problem that the developers are either A, not optimizing properly within that hardware space, and B, choosing to even try to make something work on there if they can't even hit something acceptable. The other one is that Nintendo not providing a platform that is at least so there's like a floor and then there's a ceiling in terms of performance, and Nintendo is in the basement. They're like, "Hey, we figured out how to make a portable GameCube." Okay, which is technically the 3DS. But they have now basically we're working with a portable Wii at this stage of the game, which isn't even that great. It's barely the I guess in raw
It's
specs.
better than a Wii. It's better than a
Yeah,
Wii.
I guess
You
I'm
mean a Wii
exaggerating a bit.
U?
No, no. I guess from what I've seen from the raw specs, the Switch is just a little bit more powerful than the 360, the Xbox 360. So that's kind of what we're dealing with in a handheld, which, when you think about it in that regard, it's pretty impressive, even still. But we've quickly surpassed that, considering the PS4 and the Xbox One were also kind of operating on hampered technology, or at least not the most cutting edge. They're compromised. Is the better word. And now that we've got PS5 and Xbox Series, we're seeing really good stuff. Also, phones and tablets, the way they're updating mobile processors and stuff like that, it's just blowing past Nintendo. I understand and I can respect Nintendo saying we don't need the best hardware. We need good hardware, which I understand. So this is where, like, okay, the Switch itself is a good gimmick to be able to go dock into your TV as well as go handheld. And developers shouldn't be bringing games that really can't scale down and handle, in my opinion, 60, in realistic opinion, a stable 30. And there's even indie games that struggle on it, so I don't even know what the deal is. I think it's the CPU. Yes, that's right. Digital Foundry has a video. They show that you can overclock the CPU, but that affects battery life on the Switch, which is a factor because it is partially portable. So there is like slight overclocking, I guess, when it's docked. And maybe some games.
Yeah, it runs at a higher clock rate when it's
Yeah.
docked. That's why you have better performance docked than handheld in
So
almost every game.
yeah. So that's the thing. Even that ceiling though is still too low for what it is. Nintendo really does need to kind of just foot the bill a little bit. They're obsessed with making money on their hardware, but that's coming at the cost of clearly software quality at this point. That they don't even have enough like processing overhead for these games to run at a stable 30 undocked. So or docked, excuse me, docked, because that's where they'd have the most things. Like, come on, guys, like get it together. You're it's really making it worse, and honestly, they're just taking advantage of consumers. by doing this.
Yeah, a lot of them don't know any better. I mean, think of all the families and your casual gamers who are buying a Switch. They don't really know what they're missing. I mean, to some degree, I don't. I don't. I mean, I play some games like Smash and the games we talked about. Those are in 60
Yeah,
frames per second. But a lot of the games I have played are not. I'm not a PC player, so I don't really have the option to crank up the FPS in every game that I want to be higher, or adjust the settings so I do get a higher frame rate.
yeah,
So
you're stuck
um,
with it. And also, I will say,
I'd like to have the option.
I'm not telling people not to have fun with their games. I know I'm sounding a little overly critical. And I get that for some people, they're super excited that this is like a better version and they're going to use it handheld. And then, of course, it still plugs into the TV. This is like an upgraded light model where they're like, I use it portably a lot, so I'm going to benefit from the OLED screen, but I can still dock it to my TV. So it's just basically a premium light. And I can understand that. I can appreciate it. But no one would be harmed in the process by the Switch having better horsepower, better visual processing, but better GPU and a better CPU. Also, portable people deserve a better battery life, and that's another thing where I get like that's the power. But as I've said, I think the Switch could be a little thicker to accommodate all these components, and it honestly wouldn't be a big deal. And Nintendo could just kind of bite the bullet on the hardware cost and lose a couple bucks to get the right components in it. Not to mention, the Joy-Con problem still isn't fixed. Joy-Cons are still very low quality in terms of their analog sticks. They're going to keep breaking, and Nintendo has not done anything to counter that, whether that's reducing the price of Joy-Cons, which they should do. If they're not going to fix the Joy-Cons, they should lower the Joy-Con price by 20 bucks. Right now, I think a pair is like 70.
70 on sale. The MSRP is 80 for a pair,
Are you serious?
which is a lot.
All
That's
right.
like the most. That's like the most expensive control. Like $69 is like your typical deal on Joy Cons, like at Amazon or Walmart or any of those retailers. 69 is usually as low as it goes.
Jeez. Yeah, no, they should permanently lower the price to $20 less. So if it's 80 for a pair, it should be 60 for a pair, and then 30 for them separately. It doesn't make any sense. If they're not going to actually fix the issue and these things are going to do that, I get that they're repairing it, but yeah, having gone through the repair process myself, and I think they were gone for like 4 weeks. That's a lot. And I'm someone who is lucky enough to be able to afford multiple sets of Joy Cons, also having a Pro controller, etc. But for someone who like buys one Switch and has just those Joy Cons and maybe could get a second pair at some point, like it's still a lot of money to drop, and you can't drop that on a whim. And you have to, and you switch it in and you turn it in for repair. Like that's rough. It's
And it's
unacceptable.
short-sighted of Nintendo to think about the cost of repairing them or think about the cost of making better Joy-Cons because it's going to do damage to their brand. Someone who buys this, like you said, who has limited means, who, this is their one system, they're not going to buy a Nintendo system again. They might have won a lot of people with their Switch design, but they might lose a lot of those people when they realize how many issues there are with the Switch.
I wonder what it's going to take because I think Nintendo does coast by on a lot of goodwill from having good games. And that's the thing. I'm always wondering what the breaking point is. And there's a lot of people who don't keep an eye on this for the mass market. And I think Joy-Cons last just long enough that the casual audience really doesn't notice, kind of the thing. So, like, us hardcore who play a lot of Switch, go through it, they break. And
A lot of Smash Bros. The joystick destroyer.
probably
I think that's one of the worst on them.
Mario Kart, probably that. Mario Kart, Splatoon are probably like the three
Oh,
that would that would break that left Joy-Con real quick. And then the right Joy-Con specifically for Splatoon, if that one wears out just as bad. And the same problems in the Switch Lite because they use the same type of analog sticks. So if your Switch Lite analog sticks break, you have to get a whole new unit. You have to either send your unit in for a full repair, or by sending in for repair, air quotes, it probably is them sending you just a spare unit that they have lying in the warehouse, and they take the sticks out or whatnot and refurbish or recycle the items. You'd hope hopefully recycling, but it's hard to say. So, it would have behooved everyone if Nintendo actually increased the power in this model, or just waited. They just made an official statement. Why can't they make an official statement and go, hey, maybe they're afraid of looking bad. I don't know. I can only speculate on what their actual motivations are, other than like clearly they're doing this. And I get it. The Switch is selling really well now. Animal Crossing performed way better than they ever anticipated it could have. The Switch sold out while everyone was home during the pandemic, which is great. There's the microchip shortage, or the silicon shortage, that's affecting every electronic. And that was probably my best guess. Is if I had to make my own guess, my own uh, completely unsubstantiated guess on what probably scared Nintendo, was that with the silicon shortage coming up to make the extra chips, the cost probably went up. And then they said that was outside their tolerance range. They were probably planning the more powerful model. They knew what the price was for those chips. Then the silicon shortage was going, and then everyone else was competing along with the Xbox, the PlayStation, all the other electronics. And they probably came back and said, hey, it's going to cost more for you to do these chips if you want to be on our assembly lines, considering the shortage. And Nintendo went, you know what, take that out. We can, we'll just sell it with the OLED screen, the speakers, and these other things. That's my best guess on what actually caused Nintendo to back out of doing the increased power in it. I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was gonna say that maybe they didn't want their systems to be scalped and in such shortage like the PlayStation and Xbox were, but they had that last year, and I I don't know if that bothered them that much. So that's probably not the reason.
And I think Switches were scalped pretty early on too, and that was during normal times.
Yeah,
So we just
yeah, that's
recover
what I
from that
mean.
faster. I don't think they care. I really don't think. I don't. You know what, Ed? They don't care about scalping, because think of how few amiibos they make.
Hopefully, they'll make more of the Metroid amiibos and more of the Skyward Sword amiibo.
Yeah, you'll probably see a
But
bunch of stuff like either get traded in or even like extra stock that people don't pick up. Because think about it, people will pre-order, they'll forget about it, and then suddenly there's like 5 special editions left over in your local GameStop because nobody picked them up.
yeah, that's Nintendo doesn't like to have stock on the clearance rack, so I get it, but that's a completely different discussion of how
Yeah,
Nintendo meets or fails to meet demand.
yeah. So with
So
yeah, so the Nintendo OLED model, I guess we're in consensus. It's very disappointing. Probably neither of us are gonna get it. Hopefully Nintendo will make it up to its fans. We still got good games to look forward to. I am strongly looking at just emulating the next couple games until Nintendo's next hardware iteration comes out, because I just don't want to deal with the low performance. I'll still keep an eye out, and if the games actually perform well on the Switch, I'll get a legitimate copy. But if it doesn't, then just wait till the game runs smoothly on an emulator and play it.
I think that what Nintendo should do is next year don't even put out a pro model. It's been 5 years since the original Switch. I think it's time for a complete upgrade. And those last few games, like Metroid Prime 4 and Bayonetta 3, they can be cross-gen games, but after that, just cut it off. I mean, I know they want to be accessible to as many people, but that comes at the expense of having a good experience with your games.
Yeah, I'm hearing the chip shortage may last longer now, like through all of 2023. So I wonder if Nintendo would be gearing up for a new platform for their next generation in, say, 2024. But I wonder if we'll get an announcement in next year about, like, hey, next generation of Nintendo Switch is coming next year, or how long they're really going to coast on a Switch. Or maybe we'll even see like this kind of protracted generation. Well, so going by Nintendo's history, they definitely do let handheld generations linger forever. So it's very likely that when whatever's going to be the next Switch, hopefully it's another Switch and not like a brand new idea. It would be insane if they don't do just another iteration of the Switch that's like actually a full next gen upgrade. I could see them like I said, my hope is that they're going to be able to complete their full like ultimate conglomeration system, and they're going to invest in doing wireless HDMI, so that way your regular Switch can now function the way the Wii U is, and you like your dock can beam to your TV, and you can use it as your second screen. Of course, the base model now has more power in it overall, and that's like what they do: more power plus wireless HDMI, so um, you don't even have to dock it if you don't want to, and you could take advantage of the touchscreen at the same time while you're playing on the TV.
Yeah, and I would love to see them maybe even consider the dock being extension of the power of the Switch. You know, on desktop, you can have external GPUs on Thunderbolt. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, maybe that's too much. That's too much to ask for Nintendo. I'll take that back. They're not, that's too outlandish. And but I think there's so much like you're suggesting with the wireless HDMI, and you know they could do a lot with the dock being an extension of the handheld Switch. So there's a lot of potential with this form factor. Let's hope they can iterate and execute on some new ideas while still keeping what people like about the Switch, which is the hybrid nature of it.
Yes, the hybrid nature is the most important part at this point. And I'm going to rephrase something you just said a little bit, because I don't think it's too much to ask from Nintendo. I think it's completely reasonable for Nintendo to do something like that. What it is it's just unrealistic to expect Nintendo to be trying to do so good. Like, and what I wanted to bring up at the start when you were going over like the rumors were wrong. Actually, the rumors were only they were 90% correct. Almost everything else we heard about was there. It just wasn't the increased power. It was the only thing that wasn't there. The dock was rumored in a report. The OLED screen was like the biggest rumor for forever. I don't think anyone really cared about the stand, but they did. So it's hard to say if they actually did that. And more internal memory might have been out there. I forget exactly. So yeah, most of the rumors did actually come true, except for the increased power. So at this
And
point,
that's the only one that matters. That's the only one that
it
matters.
mattered the most. It definitely did.
I mean, I'd take that. I'd take that over all the other upgrades.
Yeah, it makes no sense that like, and I get it. All these things are made like years in advance, so the Switch Lite couldn't have had like an OLED screen. That would have made more sense for the Switch Lite to debut with an OLED screen at the same size, or smaller. Like, of course you're gonna have a higher quality screen, but it's a smaller screen, so that compensates for the price. Then it's portable only, because clearly you want the best screen on portable, because someone who's playing portably has no choice. So yeah, I don't know. Even a refreshed light model that would have been able to dock to the TV. But I guess that's what this is. This is your Pro Light. This is the Switch Lite Pro LED.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess that's it.
I'm just disappointed. Just disappointing.
Yeah. Well,
But
no skin off our nose.
I
I
mean,
guess
if you're
one
a
less thing to
Nintendo
buy.
fan, you're always used to being disappointed, right? You know, there's always a bit of that monkey's paw to their announcements.
Weird. Yeah. Well, once again, these reacts are very impromptu. We can't plan. We don't really plan for doing reacts. We just see if we have really strong feelings about something. Also, the PlayStation State of Play was most recently today, but for the next episode is when we're planning to talk about Sony and PlayStation. So that's where we'll give some details there. Um, yeah, we're don't know if we'll make it a habit of reacts, but we'll think about it, and obviously we'll still, whenever it's like big news and we feel like we can crank out an episode, we'll do it. So thanks again, all our listeners, for this. Get this up on YouTube, and you'll be able to listen to this on YouTube. And I think we'll talk about getting it on audio feeds in some way, and maybe just mix it into the current playlist for the Option Menu Crew podcast, just because so rarely. But yeah, thank you again, everyone, for who listened today. Thank you, Ed, for being with me.
Hey, I'm always happy to be here.
And yeah, everyone, take care until the next time.
Bye.